Hey guys, just Andy here, jumping in with a quick note ahead of this rare piece of bonus Beat the Sheet content. So, we recorded this sports special earlier in the week. We thought it'd be a fun bit of bonus content to put up where we go through the latest or best versions of the 11 different sports that we could find in Game Pass currently. And we chose to rank them not only on the game, but also on the sport itself. So it's something a bit different. But anyway, yeah, cut to midweek this week, the day before we chose to post this. And Game Pass has decided to have what we'd have to say is its sportiest week ever. So yeah, this week Game Pass is adding Madden 21, NBA 2K21, and even Football Manager 21 they're all coming to the service this week. Sadly, this does mean that those games aren't represented in this feature as we recorded this earlier in the week, but they will definitely be covered in episode 40 of Beat the Sheet, which will be, as always, with you on Mondays. So yeah, anyway, we just hope you enjoy this bonus content. Definitely let us know what you think of it in the YouTube comments or via email or on Twitter. And yeah, we'll catch you on Monday again for episode 40. Thanks, guys, and yeah, hope you enjoy.
Okay, we've come up with something a little bit different for you this week. We're going to change our name from Beat the Sheet to Beat the Sports because we've decided to go through pretty much every game of a sports franchise in Game Pass and complete them and play them. So what we're going to do is we're going to rank those games. We try to pick out the best example of that genre. So for example, football has FIFA and eFootball. PES, we chose FIFA because it's better than PES. So there will be gaps, but on the whole, we've got them all here. We've got 11 different sports titles. And as we review the sports games, we shall review the sports themselves. So yeah, we will give a definitive ranking of what is the best sport in general. We will combine our video game score and our sports score into one whole to give a definitive ranking of sport.
Yep. That's what we do here. That's it's the kind of stuff you get at Beat the Sheet or Beat the Sport as we are now known for. So, right, very excited for this. Let's get rolling.
Okay, let's start off alphabetically with our first sports title and sport, Cricket 19, which is about cricket.
It sure is. Yeah, right. I mean, Cricket 19, this is a game we covered when it got added to the show a few months ago. And I tell you what, Cricket 19, despite being a painfully low budget game, is a surprisingly great time when you get into it. Really enthralling game to play as long as you play as a batsman. Don't even try and be a bowler in Cricket 19 because that is as tedious as being a bowler would be in real life. But yeah, I have very little bad to say about Cricket 19 other than the budget issues. It could do with a hell of a lot more money behind it.
Yeah, presentation-wise, this game is not up to much, but the actual cricket itself, it's pretty good cricket. Like, it's pretty decent. The batting is real fun. It's really fun just to stand at the crease and pick your shots and slog occasionally. And when you're chasing a total, you need to go all out. But if you've got a tail ender at the other end, you can't be too serious. You've got to stay on strike. It gets that feeling of cricket batsmanship real good. It also gets the feeling of cricket bowling, which is just an endless slog where you may get a breakthrough eventually, but you just need to do it for 7 or 8 overs, which is a little bit tedious, and the fielding is still terrible. The fielding in this game is real bad. They've not worked out how to do that well yet. But you know what? For a cricket game, and cricket does not lend itself to a video game particularly well, I'd say this is a damn good effort.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we're saying that bowling and fielding is dreadful in this game, but bowling and fielding is dreadful in cricket. It's a part of cricket. If you're watching like a 5-day test match and the team bowling can't get the other team out, the people on the pitch are also bored and fed up and frustrated. That's literally just the sport. So, they do capture the sport. And yeah, as I said, the batsman stuff's good. It's got a really good career setup because the career loops between the different types of cricket. So, 1 week you'll be playing a 5-day test where you need to be kind of careful and cautious about when to score runs. You don't want to get out for like a low score. But then the next week you'll be playing a T20 game where you just need to smash and get a bunch of runs and stuff. So it gives you a full flavor of all the different types of cricket and stuff, which is great. And yeah, just good fun. But again, with the budget, this literally does look like a PlayStation 2 game. This isn't just a small issue with budget. This looks absolutely god awful. The arenas in particular are just unbelievably bad. So that is quite a severe knock against it. It can't be understated, sadly.
Yeah, it ain't no looker. That is a fact. But it does have a real cool character creation mode, which I like. You can do a lot of weird things to your cricketers,
Yeah,
which
you
I
can.
love. You can also put them in basically any country into the dirtiest, dingiest town possible to start their career, which I also kind of love. So there's a lot to enjoy there. And I'm pretty certain this is the game that allowed me to be called Wheezy Goatbo
It
over
was,
the
yeah.
commentary, which again is worth a 7 on its own. I would still give Cricket 19 a 7 out of 10. I think it's a damn good game. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd give this a 7 as well. So this is an easy one for us. The game score can just be a 7. Yeah, it's a lot better than it should be. This is a game that I actually had to uninstall because it was going to take away from my beat the sheet challenge progress because I was going to play it instead of stuff like heavy weapon. So yeah, I just had to uninstall it because it's quite addictive. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for the game. But let's roll into the sport, Josh. What are we thinking for cricket as a sport? I'm fairly high on it, has to be said.
I do like cricket. I enjoy just sitting down and absorbing in a test. This is a real sell of our Britishness that cricket is instantly something we enjoy. But yeah, I do like cricket. I don't dislike much about it. I mean, nobody likes a draw in cricket. A drawn test in cricket kills you. It just kills you dead because you've not just spent an afternoon watching a draw. You spent 5 days watching a draw, which really hurts. That sucks a lot. But, you got your 50 over, your 20 over cricket. I don't know. I'd give cricket an 8. I think cricket's a good sport. I'd give it an 8.
Yeah, I think cricket it's very much kind of highest of highs, lowest of lows, right? Like bad cricket is absolutely dreadful. As you said, like sitting through a 5 days of watching a test match to get either, a rained out draw or maybe the pitch is just too easy for the batsman. So nobody's getting out. So they just score too many runs and it's just a draw because they run out of time. That's all incredibly tedious. A very one-sided match is also dreadful. There was an England versus India test just this week where it ended after a day and a half and it was meant to take 5 days because it was just a mess. So, I do think bad cricket is real, real bad. Like one of the worst sports when it's bad because, as you said, you waste so much time on it. But when it's good, and I think over the last few years, there's been some real good cricket. It's very much got me into the sport recently. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd lean 7, but I could be persuaded by 8.
Shall we say 7, if only because we were so bad against India this past week. It's put a stain on my memory. Any Indian listeners, do laugh at us on our email accounts and Twitter feeds because, good God, we were terrible. But nonetheless, let's give cricket a 7, and that gives it an overall score of 14.
Yeah, that works for me.
And straight to the top of the rankings by virtue of what rankings are. Let's move on to our second sport and second game, F1 2019, which is about the sport of Formula One.
Yes, F1 2019. So our first introduction to this series really was when we got completely shafted on a very early episode of Beat the Sheet, where F1 2018 left with about 3 days' notice, and we had to race through it really, really quickly. And I don't know about you, Josh, but I was dreading that because I just thought it would be really boring. I thought it was going to be just a bit dull, a lot of laps to do in F1. I thought, I really don't want to play this. And then it turned out to be, there's an argument to say the best racing game on the service. It's up there. It's incredibly enthralling to play these F1 games. And this 2019 edition is even better than the 2018 one. So yeah, surprisingly fantastic game.
Yeah, F1 surprisingly translates fantastically to video games. I don't know if it's because it cuts all the laps down so that there's less F1, but more diluted in its most purest form. In many ways, that kind of works. I never sat through a 52 lap of this game because I would have rather died. But a 10 lap F1 race or even a 20 lap F1 race, if you want to do half races, is real good time. And I love the qualifying as well. I didn't think I would. I love going out to do some practice around the course and getting a feel for when I should be braking hard and when I could take a corner with a bit more speed. You can do a lot of that. You can tweak your car. You can, mess about with contracts and engineers, and it's all there if you want it to. It can be as deep or as arcadey simmy as you kind of wish it to be. And you've got to give Codemasters who made this game a lot of props for that because this sport could quite easily get too encumbered in its geekiness and lose sight of the fact it kind of needs to be fun. But I don't think F1 2019 or F1 2018, which we played more of, ever really did that.
No, I agree completely. They do have that stuff in there to an extent in terms of, like you you can change like your fuel mix. So if you've got too much fuel left over, you can like burn it faster to go faster. Or if you're running out, you can tone that down so that you can, make it to the end of the race and stuff like that. It's got the kind of extra depth of what F1 does. There's the DRS thing, which to this day I don't really understand, but on some straights you can activate DRS to go faster, and it's got all the crazy nonsense, but it makes it really accessible and really easy to understand in a gameplay sense. And I think as well, one thing that the F1 series has over your traditional racing games is that there's something infinitely satisfying in a Formula One game about playing as a middle of the pack racing team. Like, it's really, really satisfying to play as a team where a huge win for them is to finish like 5th in a race, because you're just, every lap is a battle and you're chipping away at, there might be someone who's like a second and a half in front of you, but you're on fresher tires, and every lap you're chipping like half a second off his lead, and you're trying to pass him before you reach the end of the race. And it's something you just don't get in a lot of racing games, because most racing games, quite sensibly, are just about you kind of just crushing the competition and winning by 5 seconds at the end of the race. That's what you do. And you can do that here too if you pick the best cars. But I just think there's an incredible amount of fun to be had playing mid-tier kind of teams on this game.
Yeah, there's nothing better than scraping a 1-point finishing position in a Grand Prix and having your team congratulate you like you've just won the entire championship. They are that thrilled. It's a very good feeling. I also love the converse of, gaining time when they're in the pits to get in front of them. There's also a joy in when you have a lead, you do need to pit, and you know how many seconds you need to get ahead to be able to hold on to that lead. And as you slowly crawl your way towards the pit exit, seeing the car coming up the straight, it's a real good feeling. It's really exciting. And you would have think the sport would be that. But yeah, this is a real good game. It's one of my favorite racing games on the service. And yeah, I think this is an easy 8 out of 10. The presentation is fantastic as well. All the licenses are here, which is what you desperately need. So yeah, damn good game.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on this one. I think Formula One is an 8 out of 10 game. Yeah, I think it's really, really fantastic. It's incredibly fun and engrossing stuff. So yeah, the game definitely gets an 8 out of 10. But where are we with the sport?
Yeah, the sport is where it kind of falls down a pit a little bit, isn't it? Because I really don't like watching Formula One. It's not my favorite sport. I will preface it by saying I have never in my entire life sat through an entire weekend of F1 where I watch the practice sessions, the qualifying sessions, and then the full race, because I would rather be dead than do that. But just watching a full race, I don't know, if it's really good, I could just about do it. But I've never had the desire to sit down every fortnight to watch a new version of it. I could watch one, maybe. There was a race last year where Lewis Hamilton's tire blew up and he had to ride on it for the final 2 or 3 laps. And that was great. That was real intense entertainment. But unfortunately, wheels don't blow up that often in F1. So that's a very rare occurrence.
More blowing up wheels is what that sport needs.
That's why I want a Bernie Ecclestone stood on the side of the track with like a blow dart at people's wheels. That is how you improve F1 for me. But as a sport itself, I don't know. I'm not a fan. I'd be looking at a 4 out of 10, which might be harsh, but I'm not an F1 guy. I'm really not.
I completely agree that I do think this has to go under cricket in terms of sport quality, just because when I think about it, I think the best F1 races aren't as good as the best cricket matches. And you could argue that the worst F1 races are almost as bad as the worst cricket matches. Like when you get a race where it's just Lewis Hamilton miles ahead because he's got the best car by a mile and no one can get near him. And, the most exciting thing is who's going to finish 6th and 7th between 2 people, which is incredibly exciting when you play the game because you're the people, but it's not exciting to watch from a sporting standpoint. Like I think there's a lot of problems with F1 as a sport. I think there's too much disparity between the quality of the cars. So the best cars are just way too good compared to everyone else. And that makes it not that fun to watch. Now I think a 4 is ludicrously harsh, but I was going to go 6, so we should probably balance it out and say a 5, I guess. That seems
So
fair.
Your problem is you've never turned up to an F1 event meant to interview Martin Brundle and have him fob you off for a burger and chips after you gave up your evening to do it. So frankly, as a fuck you to Brundle, I want to give the sport a 4. But I suppose a 5 is a reasonable
That's
compromise.
Still pretty low. I feel like Formula One would be very annoyed if they were told they were officially a 5 out of 10 sport. So let's go for that. Codemasters have tried to save them with the 8 out of 10 game, but sadly, that is a 13 out of 20 overall score, which puts them below cricket.
Damn shame. Screw you, Brundle. Anyway, let's move on to our next game, FIFA 20. All about the beautiful game itself, football. So we're English. We've played a lot of FIFA. Like this is just a fact of life. And how does FIFA 20 stack up in terms of all the FIFA and PES games you've played in your life?
Yeah, so FIFA 20, I mean, obviously this game's 1 year out of date now. I'm sure we'll be getting FIFA 21 very soon in Game Pass because, EA do seem to be bringing the recent games over soon, so that's good. So yeah, FIFA 20 though, it's fine. I'm very used to FIFA at this point. As you said, we've spent way too many hours playing FIFA, particularly when we were both at university. This would be a stable of, every single like week would just be hours and hours of FIFA. So we've played a lot of it, which does mean that when I play new versions, I don't necessarily feel a ton of improvements. But it's a good game of football. It is. It's a bit too arcadey for me still. I think FIFA is very heavily reliant on just people who can run fast, and that's kind of how the game works. You get people who run fast and you run them down the wing, and that's pretty much you're going to win FIFA. So it's got its problems, but you can't get around the fact that FIFA is easily the dominant sports game out of itself in Pro Evo. I mean, even just licensing alone, this looks like a real football package. It's got all of the teams except for like about 2 teams now because Pro Evo have grabbed 2 teams. Well done. But it's got most of the teams. It's got all the authentic kind of events and stadiums. It's got commentary, which is getting better and better by the year to the point where I was actually genuinely quite impressed with the commentary in this game when I played it. It did a lot of new stuff that I didn't expect, particularly in the career mode. There's stuff where like they're doing like dynamic score updates on other games that are happening in my league. And then if an event happens in my match, they'll like cut off the score update. And then when the event finishes in my match, the commentary team be like, "Oh, sorry for cutting you off there, Alan. So just to update you on that score update, it was like 1-0 to Leeds." And it's all weirdly natural, like so natural. They very impressive stuff. Anyway, yeah, this game blows PES out the water, and it is very good.
It's a damn good game of football, this FIFA. It has been now for the best part of about 7 years, ever since it managed to get ahead of PES in the football stakes. I don't think it's ever really let go of that crown. Presentation has been getting better and better year on year. It's got the Champions League license now, which is a big thing for it too. Certainly for anybody who supports top 6 club, unlike us. But even the joy to play as a lower league English team, you can you can't in PES. You can't, play as Barrow or Cheltenham in PES. You can only do that in FIFA. So there's a joy to that, and I like that about it. Online mode's great. Ultimate Team may be a giant shill, but it's a very addictive shill.
Yeah,
I can't take it away from it. It's a damn good mode, which has just been ruined by EA. But there's a hell of a lot to like here. There's a lot of great modes. Still got a great online scene. Plays a real good game of football. Yeah, there's not much you can criticize it for. It even has a street football mode, which isn't very good, but it's
I was going to say, I enjoy how you said there's not much you can criticize it on. And then when there's a street mode, because let's get ready for some criticism. That street mode sucks. It is a bad mode. It's one of these things where like you jump into the Volta kind of street mode on this, and that's kind of where the story mode is of this game. And whether you need a story mode in a sports game is to be debated elsewhere. But it's one of those things where like they'll sell the story on this idea of like all these street footballers doing like really cool street football moves while they're in like the cage playing. But then when you actually play the game, your best route to win is to kind of just pass it in. You just play the most boring ass street football you can and just pass the ball into the net, and you'll just win, and you'll win the story. And all the people will be really dramatic about what's happening. And you're just passing that ball straight in. You're not doing anything worth any of the attention you're getting in the story. But it's a new mode. I'll give them some credit for that. It's something different. And it could be a bit of fun with a few friends, I think. Like I've only really played it against the AI, which is not fun. But I think if you're playing a 3-versus-3 game with no real goalkeepers, and you've got your friends playing that with you, it could be good fun.
That could be more fun because, as you say, the actual mode itself it isn't great. As mentioned, it is better to play more like Stoke City than Barcelona in the Volta football mode, which makes little to no sense when you think what you're actually playing, and it's painfully uncool in the way that only a game developer's version of street football could be. Let's be honest, it couldn't be whiter if it tried. But alas, it's there. It's not exactly the highlights. And I'd still say on the whole, you're looking at an 8 out of 10 for FIFA. It's a real good game. It's real fun to play.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd sit at a 7 for this particular iteration of FIFA. I just find the matches a bit formulaic after a while. I think nothing feels different. Everything in FIFA feels like it has almost a level of like a script you're following sometimes, I feel like you score the same goals a lot. You do the same moves a lot because they're so much more effective than anything else. As I said, just running down the wing with really fast people. I don't know. I don't think it's the most balanced game of football, but I do think it's the most fun game of football by a good margin. So yeah, we're at a bit of an impasse here. How strong do you feel about your 8? I could go up on this one.
When you think of it compared to Cricket 19, which also got a 7, I think
it's an 8, isn't it? It's an 8.
Dramatic increasing.
Makes you feel like we should have given F1 a 9, and that when you use that argument. But nah, fair enough. Yeah, FIFA's an 8. That's fair.
Let's get on to the sport itself, though. Football. What do you say about football? It's the biggest sport in the world. It's watched by billions. I've seen more matches than I can count in my life. I only watched one yesterday. So, I was watching one literally before this sodding podcast started. So what do you even say about this sort of game?
Yeah. I mean, football's real good, right? And, again, feel free to tell us we're stupid in, via email or on Twitter or in the YouTube comments if you're on the YouTube video. We're going to be quite biased here because we're obviously both English. So we like our cricket and we like our football. And not looking forward to some of you hearing about our thoughts on NFL, but yeah, look, football is the best sport for me. Of course, it is. It just has to be, right? It's what we grew up with here. It's just such a big cultural thing, and even just as a sport, I think it excels at every level. Like I love watching like garbage level football as much as I like, maybe even more than I like watching top level football. I just love all of it. So, I mean, I'm probably going to give football a 9 here.
I think you kind of got to give football a 9, don't you? I mean, I will watch every single match of the European Championships this summer, no matter who is playing. I've spent about £250 on Hull City games this season, this year alone, which is a ludicrous amount of money to spend on Hull City. Nobody should ever do that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a damn good sport. We got to love some football. I think that gives it a round total of 17, which is going to be pretty tough to beat. But let's see if our next competitor can land a knockout blow. It's Fight Night Champion, representing the sport of boxing.
Yeah, Fight Night Champion. This is, I mean, I've said this a few times on the podcast, but I remain baffled by the fact that Fight Night isn't just a, constant series. We should have had about 4 more Fight Nights from when this one came out to now. It's been 10 years. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, Fight Night Champion is a good game, good boxing game. I always enjoy combat sports in games. I think they're very satisfying to play. It's just, that kind of, there's like that kind of rhythm of it, you're kind of finding your gaps to get like a jab in, and then you're ducking away, you're weaving out the way of the other person's shots and stuff. And, getting knockouts in these kind of games will always just be infinitely satisfying. Like, especially in games that really represent it well. And I think Fight Night does, for a game that is 10 years old, I think this game, it's good. It's really well rounded. The look of it still holds up pretty well. It's fairly well animated. It gets shown up by more recent games. The UFC series, for example, which we'll be touching on later. It looks a hell of a lot nicer than Fight Night, but of course it does. It's a modern game. So yeah, I have a lot of positives with Fight Night Champion, and I think it has a fun little story mode as well. It's a good excuse to go through a bunch of fights with like a few different kind of weird twists on what you need to do. And I mean, it's let down a bit by an insanely infuriating final boss, but other than that, it's good fun.
I really like the story mode of Fight Night Champion. It's proper trash. Like the actual story itself is just complete trash. And I kind of like that. It's filled to the brim with cliches. It's almost like they were actively trying to get every boxing cliche into one story. It's that level of cliche. But it's a real good time to play through. And Fight Night Champion as a game to play has some really satisfying stick controls. I feel like the actual use of the sticks to throw punches is really satisfying. Being able to throw an uppercut and throw a high hook down and all that sort of jazz. It's a real good time. And, when you are just pounding face, and I never really got a feel for defending in this game. I just went in to blitz people and hope for the best. But it's fun to do that. It's a real fun time when you do that. Shout out as well, though, to that last boss, which is just a ludicrous fight where it just forces you to defend, despite the fact that you never have to defend all game. And then all of a sudden you have to get real good at defending for the best parts of 3 minutes at a time, sometimes 9 minutes at a time, and it's just painful.
Well, they kind of go from sort of, most of the other fights in the career mode are like, largely you're just playing the game as it's meant to be played. They might occasionally throw in a little thing where like, maybe you've got like an injury to your chin or something before a fight. And if you get hit by the other guy's left hook, you will go down in this fight. And, little things like that. But then the final boss, they basically just decide they want to run you down a kind of very scripted, like Rocky Balboa fight. So you literally just have to follow the script of like, you can't touch him in round 1 and 2 because he's going to just murder you and stuff. And it's real frustrating. It really, really is irritating. But yeah, it doesn't tarnish the game too much. This is real fun.
Yeah, and it's got a very out-of-date roster now. Most of the fighters you can play as have retired or possibly even been arrested. So it's pretty cool that you can play as all these old dudes. It's a decent game. It's all right. I'd probably give it a 7. I don't think it's the best Fight Night game I've ever played. I think there's better versions of Fight Night and there's better boxing games out there. Ready to Rumble on the Dreamcast being the obvious example.
Well, obviously, yeah.
But, this is a pretty good time. I'd give it a 7.
Yeah, let's not forget Mike Tyson heavyweight boxing on the PS2, which is not a good boxing game. That's something from our worst sports game ever Olympics we did before the show. But yeah, this is a 7. I think that's fair. If I had to do some kind of tiebreaker with it in Cricket 19, I would actually say that Cricket 19 is better, but it definitely warrants its 7. So 7 out of 10 for the game. How do we feel about boxing as a sport, Josh?
Well, boxing's real up and down, and so this has got some serious cricket issues. Like if you get a good fight, this is real entertaining. I love watching a proper slobber knocker boxing bout. But there's also the times when there's 2 guys who are playing for a points victory, and you just have to sit through it for 36 minutes of nobody really touching each other. And that's real dull. And there's also the drawback for us here in the UK that the best fights don't start till about 5 in the morning anyway. So you're real bored by the time you sat through 12 minutes of nothing and you're real sleepy. So it's a tough one for us to rate. I'm not a huge fan, but a good boxing bout is quite entertaining.
Yeah, I really get drawn into the hype of a big boxing event, but I only the very big ones mind. But, if there's a huge kind of heavyweight title fight on, I will be up at 5 a.m. watching it because few sports match that level of kind of hype for an event as a big boxing main event can. But then I do think it kind of falls apart below that. Like I never think boxing has an interesting undercard. I know they never really sell you on any of the fights other than the main one. It's always just a bunch of up and comers who are like, 1 to 100 to win against someone because it's basically just there to let, they're just in there with a punching bag basically and stuff like that. It's a very politics driven sport in that way. They kind of protect people by just giving them easy wins until they can book one of those big fights. And obviously you got all the issues where the best people never really fight the best people because they're all kind of, again, playing politics with it. So there's enough frustrations in boxing that I'm coming out pretty low on this. Am I coming out F1 level though? I don't know, maybe. I'm thinking 5 or 6 for the sport of boxing over here.
It's a tough one because if you're looking at like 70s and 80s boxing where people could fight each other and they were not scared of losing a fight, nowadays, if you lose one fight, your career is practically over, which is just a ludicrous situation to find yourself in. But, modern boxing, I'd say a 5 on the whole. It is pretty tedious. Those fights, so it's some big dude against a hobo with a bindle is pretty tedious stuff. So I'd agree with a 5, and that puts Fight Night Champion and boxing in general as a 12 out of 20, which puts it currently at the bottom of the list.
That's a real bad showing.
Shame. It's a real bad showing for boxing.
It is, yeah. And I would say as well, I actually, we kind of said, where has Fight Night been for 10 years? I have a feeling that that kind of politics stuff might be why. It might just simply be too awkward in this era to actually get all of these boxers to kind of sign off on being in the games, I could see that being a real train wreck. So yeah, it's just disappointing, but 12 out of 20, for boxing. Just not a good showing today.
Not fantastic. Let's move on to our next sport and next game, which is Madden 20, which represents the sport of American football. Now, let's play some football. What do you think?
Yeah, let's. Right. This is going to be a rough one for me. I'll apologize in advance to any massive NFL fans. We're starting with the game here, and I kind of think Madden NFL 20 sucks, Josh. I don't think this is a very good game. I think it's real boring. The career mode is horrendous. It's the most boring career mode out of all of the sports games we've played. I just think it's just dreadful. Like, you play as a quarterback, which, is obviously the position you should play in a career mode in an NFL game. But then they just make you play the whole game with everyone. And it's like, that makes no sense. Like, if I'm the quarterback and I'm trying to break into the team, like in mine, I did an awful job in the draft. So I was like second, I was like a low second choice kind of quarterback backup guy when I got into the career mode. And it was like, right, we're going to give you like one quarter to try and impress us. But then the game wanted me to play my quarter, and then like 3/4 as Eli Manning. And I'm like, well, I don't want to play well with him because I'm trying to take his spot. Like, don't. And then I'm playing like the defense plays as well. And I'm like, why am I playing on defense? Like, that makes no sense. I'm the quarterback man. I'm him, and I'm trying to get him a career here. Like, I don't know. It just goes against what all of these modes are like in other games, and I really don't like it for that. I feel like they're trying to drag out a lack of content.
The problem Madden 20 has, and it's probably the problem all American football games have, is that it's trying to represent a real complicated sport.
Yeah.
There's a hell of a lot going on in American football. It's possibly the most complicated sport on this list, quite comfortably. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of plays and runs and positions which make very little sense until you really dig into them. And yeah, that doesn't lend itself to incredible gameplay. There's a lot of just running around hoping you're going to eventually figure out how this game clicks. And once it does, it has its moments. There is a joy in throwing a big Hail Mary pass and having it connect. That feels good. That feels real good. But there was a lot of me also just picking plays at random and not really knowing what that was meant to do. Because although I do follow the sport and I understand the core rules of it, to get into playbook levels of detail is where I have to tap out. I can't get that into it without, becoming a high school American student. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, the game itself, presentation wise, it's pretty decent as you'd expect. It's all there. It feels a little slight. Maybe there's not too many modes here. I expected a fun like throw around mode with like maybe 7 players against 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like that. There's no like arcadey substitute. You either play a franchise mode where you not only have to deal with the complexities of the game itself, you then need to understand how to put a team together, and God help you if you're having to learn that as well. I will say, if you're into the sport, Christ, you must have your year sorted when this game comes out, because there's a lot to it. But I don't know. I've played a lot of EA sports games, and I don't think this is one of their better ones, to be honest with you. It doesn't click with me as much as others do.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and you're completely right as well. It's totally just unapproachable as a kind of, entry level person who isn't aware of what the sport is really like. I mean, I watch pretty much the Super Bowl each year, and that's it. And yeah, when you look at those playbooks, particularly the defensive playbooks, like, it's all just an absolute mess to me. Like, I can understand passing plays because you can see them quite clearly. They show those up quite well. You can see all the different routes and lines. You can hold in a trigger to see where each player is going to run. That's fine. But the defensive stuff, I'm literally just pressing on what the coach recommends, because I have no way of learning what the hell all that stuff is. It's absolute nonsense. So yeah, I just really, really not big on this game at all. I also think it's really frustrating when you because like you said, it's great when you throw a long pass and it succeeds, but often it won't. And that's fine. That's the sport, obviously. But I think this game has a really hard time kind of showing you why something didn't work, like you'll just throw a decent pass and your guy will just kind of fluff the catch. And why, what, like, did you make a mistake? Was that just because that player isn't particularly good at catching, or was there some good interference from the defense team? Like, I don't feel like the game really does a good job of helping me get better at it. I feel like if I make a mistake, it's just like, sod it, I'll just try again and do something, maybe it'll work next time. And that's not very satisfying either.
No, that is a pretty big problem, to be fair. And I'd also say playing defense is an absolute nightmare beyond belief. You wouldn't even imagine, because if you're not playing as a linebacker, then God help you, because I don't know how to defend the pass at all. Never quite figured out how to do that. And, So all I ever did was just rush the quarterback and hope for the best.
That's all I do. I pick the one player that, is going to try and break through and get the sack, and I just do that because I'm not going to learn how to actually do the actual defensive play with one of the other players. It'd be an absolute nightmare. I'd be interested to know if, people who are actual real, big NFL fans, is there anyone out there who enjoys the defensive side of a Madden game, or is it just all about getting through that to be the quarterback again? If anyone does want to get in touch on that one, on the YouTube comments or something, do let us know, because I'm genuinely curious. I can't understand from my side how people enjoy the defense in this game, but maybe that's just because I'm not into the sport enough. So yeah, really interested in that. But I've gave this a 5 for the game. I don't think it's very fun at all.
Yeah, I gave it a 6, maybe out of kindness, but I could happily go down to a 5 on this. I don't think it's a fantastic game. The sport itself, though, let's move on to the sport itself. I am probably more of an American football fan than you are. I do try to watch a game a weekend that it's on. I quite enjoy the sport. I think it's quite entertaining, mainly because American football games, despite the fact you wouldn't think they would, have an uncanny ability to stay very close. There's very few blowouts. So often when you're going into the final quarter of a game, there's still something to play for. And although you will always have examples where that doesn't happen, a lot of the time, the games I watch, it's still pretty exciting going into those final few passes. And that is some real drama when they've got, one drive to do it and it's against the clock and the out of timeouts and all the ludicrous rules and the 2-minute warning, which makes no sense to me. I think it's for adverts.
It is. It's an American sport, Josh. It's all for adverts. It's just, yeah. But I mean, I will give it some credit for that. I do think that, as you said, close games are exciting in this sport. Briefly going back to the game for a second, I had one that went to third overtime. And even though I don't love this game, that was enthralling because it was so tense. So, when this sport is close, it is exciting. It's got a sense of kind of drama and scale to it that few sports match. The Super Bowl is such a just outrageously huge event. They really do know how to lead into that and make it seem like the biggest thing that's happening on the planet. So I do appreciate that, even if I do hate having to watch a music concert for 1 hour in the middle of a sporting event. Can't understand that. That's nonsense. But I do see why the sport has its fans. I think it's a very deep and complicated game, but it is exciting. So I don't know. I'd probably give it a 6. I still think there's too many delays and breaks in it to be truly top tier, but I don't think it's awful.
I'm going to campaign for a 7, and I'll give you my reason why. American football is possibly one of the few sports where every play kind of matters. And there's every moment matters because every down is stopped, the play stops. There's no passing around the back like in a football game, which is just dead time. Every single time the ball is in motion, something is happening and something needs to be stopped. And that's kind of exciting. Yeah. The constant incremental yardage that people have to make lends itself to keeping that interesting as well. Be it you need to make 2 yards and they need to stop 2 yards. There's always some moments where a game can flip and turn. And it happens with every single play, which is why you can sit through the endless ad breaks, because you know that after it, something important's going to happen no matter what. There's no dead time. Yeah. And I think that's quite exciting. And very few sports do that. I mean, cricket kind of comes close in that you kind of have to, every ball matters because something could happen. Everything happens. If you don't play it well, you get out. If you play it well, you get a 4. And I think American football has some of that cricket kind of charm to it.
Yeah, no, I can be sold on that. I agree. I think, as you said, every play does matter. If someone's on a third down and they need to get over the line on that play, there's excitement there. I can go for the 7. That's entirely fair. So that does give Madden NFL and American football in general a 12. So it joins boxing at the bottom of the pack, but at least it's not actual on its own last. So that's nice.
But you can blame Madden for that. Not the sport. Blame
that's
Madden.
Very
Madden
true. Yeah,
kind of sucks.
Madden is it's got some work to do. I think Madden has spent too long being the only game in town in this series. Yes. It needs some competition desperately, and I think even the fans of the series are saying that these days. So yeah, as you said, good showing for the sport, but the game does let it down.
Okay, next sport, Moto GP 20, representing Moto GP. Now, we did say Fight Night champion and Madden NFL 20 were perhaps surprise entrants at the bottom. Well, they ain't going to be bottom for long.
No.
Because I hate this game. I was motorbikes.
I was tempted to just do a prolonged boo for a minute and then move on, but just a big boo, because this game it's dreadful, Josh. This is a bad game. This was like all of the worst parts of Formula One 2019 is Moto GP. You know, it's like it tries to do the full career path, but nothing about it is exciting. The bikes control horribly. Like, this is one of those games where it feels like until you manage to figure out what the hell it wants from you, you'll just come last repeatedly. Whereas F1 takes a complex sport and actually makes it very accessible. This just takes a complex type of racing and kind of just sticks its fingers up at you and says, well, if you don't get it, you don't get it, you big, massive loser. And that's pretty much what MotoGP does. So, yeah, no, I really hate this game, Josh. I really hate it. I mean, we ain't going to spend long on this one. I could go as low as a 3, but maybe a 4 is more reasonable.
No, I'd give it a 3. I really don't like this game. I actively hate driving in MotoGP 20. It's really unsatisfying. I hate bending into corners.
Yeah.
All of it does and its presentation is pretty horrible as well. So it doesn't even really have that going for it. But how does it compare to the actual sport of MotoGP, which to me has always just been a naff F1?
Yeah.
So you're starting from a 5 at its very best.
Yeah.
So how low do we go, basically?
I mean, again, like, yeah, you know, it is just kind of a garbage F1, right? It's just like, I think you've got to take some stock in this list for sports that nobody cares about, you know? Like, if nobody cares about sport, there's got to be a good reason for that. And nobody cares about MotoGP, let's be real. Like, this is one of those sports where only the highest profile like racers ever got any kind of attention. You know, it's just not in the public eye, and that's probably because it's a bit dull. So I don't know, I could give it a 4. I don't care. I think it's garbage.
Yeah, I think a 4 because, you know, if you fall off your bike, I guess that really hurts. So for absolutely nothing else, I imagine it really hurts to fall in this. Yeah. So you deserve a 4 for your pain, if nothing else. Let's move swiftly on from that 7 out of 20 and dead last on the pile. So our next title, which is NBA Live 19. Now, this represents the great sport of basketball, but you may be thinking, this feels like a cruel inclusion when the NBA 2K series is so much better. Well, there ain't any on Game Pass, is there? So, you know, what can we do? This is what we're stuck with. We all know NBA Live sucks, but this is what we've got to represent it. We've played it recently. They're very much this week for me. And yeah, this plays a considerably worse game of basketball than NBA 2K, at least in my opinion. This is streets behind the more flagship of the genre, shall we say.
Yeah, I'll go to bat a bit for this game because NBA Live's had a really bad run. You might notice that this is NBA Live 19. This is an old game because EA have just shelved this series to try and get it really right. It's meant to be coming back this year because they just took a year off and went, you know what, this isn't good enough. And even before this series has had troubles. Like, there's been years in the past before the 19 edition that didn't come out for similar reasons. So it's had a tough run. And look, I think NBA Live 19 plays a fine game of basketball. It's easier and more arcadey than NBA 2K. 2K can be sometimes intimidatingly complex with its like moves, especially when you're kind of getting close to the basket. A lot of the kind of hustle and bustle you have to do is like if you're playing as like a big tall center or something. It's all just a bit awkward and difficult to understand. Whereas this game strips a lot out of the way. It keeps it a lot simpler. So I quite enjoy the basketball on offer in this game. I do think it's better it has a kind of street basketball mode, which, I mean, it's a far cry from actual street basketball games like the old Fantastic NBA Street series or something like that. But it's probably the more fun way to play this game than actually on the court in an NBA context, because it's at that point that it really shows up that, you know, NBA 2K is one of those franchises where they've got the licenses nailed, they've got the commentary nailed, and NBA Live doesn't. So it really does look a bit poor on the actual official courts. But yeah, I think, you know, picking it up for a few games, I think it's quite fun. I'm sitting at kind of like a 6 out of 10. I think this is all right.
Yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of this. I'm not going to lie. I kind of found the game more than anything else to be really heavy. It didn't have a lot of speed to it, which to me feels like the worst crime you can possibly commit for a basketball game more than anything else. I'd also say that it's a little bit stingy on the old modes. There's not a lot of content here. I'd be pretty annoyed if I paid money for this because on the whole, you've got your general career mode and what the Be a Pro mode, which is here as well. But The Be a Pro mode in this isn't great. I don't think basketball lends itself to Be a Pro particularly well because you kind of want to control the whole team. And I'd say the career mode is just so lacking in presentation value that I don't really know why you'd play it. I would agree, though, that the street modes are pretty good. I think this is probably where EA should be going to bat with their basketball series. I don't even know why they're trying to make a competitor for 2K20. They might as well just go back to street basketball and see if they can do something different there because they seem to have a more natural flow to it in that. It seems something a bit more enjoyable within that mode. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this one. I don't think it's great.
No, that's fair. I think, it does pale in comparison to 2K in a lot of ways. At least it doesn't have a literal casino in its game, but it is it is still an EA game, so it's it's definitely got a lot of monetization in there too. So it doesn't get too off the hook on that one. But yeah, as I said, I think it's a serviceable game of basketball. Like if you're a basketball fan and you're not tied to the idea of needing to play the latest teams and the latest, fixtures and stuff, this is a fine thing to download and just have a go of. You might not get into it, but, it's in Game Pass, it's free. I think it's maybe had a harder time than it should have. I don't think it's absolute garbage. And I think a lot of people think it is. So I'd implore people to give it a look if you just want a casual pick up and play basketball game to tide you over for a bit, until maybe a newer game hits the service. But yeah, as I said, it's a 6 from me. So yeah, where are you at with this one?
I gave this a 4 on the sheet. So do we settle at a 5 or do you feel that's too cruel?
It feels a bit mean, right? I don't think this is as bad as Madden. Like, I don't know. I think Madden is a weaker game than this, but they are in a similar ballpark.
Job. I think Madden has a tougher job. You really should be able to make a fun arcade basketball title. Christ, I've managed that since the Mega Drive days.
Yeah.
So it feels like a bit of a slump, really.
Okay. I can sell for a 5. I think that's fair. As you said, yeah. If NBA Jam existed about 30 years ago, you can make a good basketball game in 2019, surely. But yeah, okay. 5 out of 10 for the game of basketball. Where are you at with the sport?
Yeah, I know you're actually quite a big basketball fan, aren't you? You're a proper hoops guy. I'm not really. It's one of those sports where, almost conversely to Madden, where every play matters, a lot of basketball is going back and forth, and it's what doesn't happen that matters. When you finally miss a shot or somebody finally blocks a shot, a lot of the time you're waiting for somebody to not do something rather than for them to do something, because the doing is not easy, but unfortunately these guys are really good at the doing. It's a bit of the problem. Doing, they're too good at basketball is my problem with basketball. I want people to be worse at this game.
So they need to throw the NBA out and have trash basketball instead.
That to me would make it more entertaining if we had worse basketball players. So I was waiting for people to achieve something rather than not achieve something.
The final score in a whole game is 10-8.
Exactly. That to me is slightly more exciting. But I will say that when the game is in full flow and you got a good tight contest, or even a contest where somebody's built a 15-point lead and it's getting chipped away at bit by bit, it can be quite exciting. But yeah, it's that inverse for me of what a sport should be. Because they're too good at it, which kind of kills basketball for me.
I can see that argument. I love basketball. I got into this massively as a fan about 15 years ago at this point. Became a huge Suns fan purely because they had Steve Nash at the time. And yeah, I spent a lot of my university years staying up till 5 a.m. to watch Phoenix Suns games. Sadly, can't do it as often these days. But yeah, I love the sport. I think it's another one of those sports that has a way of having a hell of a lot more close games than you would think. Sometimes you'll see a game that's there's a 15-point gap at halftime, and it'll get clawed back. In most cases, if you watch the third quarter, they'll start edging it back. It'll end up being a 10-point game or a 6-point game and stuff. And again, unless a lead gets obscene, it's one of those sports where the game isn't necessarily over until the last few minutes. The last few minutes of a basketball game is some of the worst sport in the world, I would say. These games peter out into just, automatic, people just do fouls so that they send the other team to the free throw line and hope they miss a free throw so they can quickly get some points on the other end and get the get the score back in their favor and stuff. And that does suck. But I do think basketball is a really exciting sport. And I think it's one of those things where if someone hits an outrageous shot or manages to drop like a bucket with like an arm in the face and then they get a 3-point play. Like there's a level of hype to that you don't get in a lot of sports, like especially when there's like crowds and arenas full of fans. I think it's got a really great atmosphere to it. So I'm really, really high on basketball. I would like to give it an 8, to be honest. I think it's great.
I think 8 is high. I mean, that's better than cricket, which it isn't. And that's pretty.
We can't benchmark everything with cricket. That's been this whole segment's just, well, what about cricket?
To be fair, I don't think there's a more British way of ranking anything than comparing it against cricket.
Yeah.
I would give it a 7 out of 10. If I was being honest, I'd give it a 6, but I'd give it a 7.
Okay, so, I can meet in the middle. I think that's always fair when we have differences like that.
I think that's fair. I feel it's been done dirty a little bit. It's real low. Is basketball on this list, but blame NBA Live, to be fair. Yeah. If that game had a casino, it'd have a bit more glitz. So maybe it kind of needed.
They should actually take the casino from 2K. Yeah, that would work. Because
at least give it a bit of shine,
That's facts. Okay. I mean, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on.
Let's move on to our next game, which is NHL 20, representing the sport of ice hockey. Now, here's a game which I didn't think I'd like, and yet came out absolutely loving, to the point where the announcement that NHL 21 is coming to EA Play within a month filled my heart with joy, because the beer pro mode in NHL 20 is the first and only time a beer pro mode has made me want to keep playing, so I could keep getting better in my one position with my one dude. It's never happened in FIFA, in Madden, in NBA. None of those modes do it for me, yet this one I loved coming on for 90 seconds and slap shotting a ball into the top corner of the net and then being told to get off and skate into the bench. It's just so much fun. I loved this game.
Yeah, I expected to really, really hate this game. This is one of those ones where, when we decided we were doing Sports Week on the show, I was like, oh, I have to play NHL. No, because every time I've tried to play NHL games, I just don't get it. I don't get the rules. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what the hell icing was. I didn't understand how you were offside in NHL. It just kept happening. There's constant face-offs, and I didn't really know why they were happening. And then you come to NHL 20, which actually makes it very clear and simple what all those rules are. They're actually very simple rules. There's not a ton of complexity to how those rules work. But any other game I've played seemed to just assume you knew them. Whereas NHL 20 immediately makes it understandable what was causing all of those different things. So that helped it right from the start. And I agree completely as well. I think the pace of that Be a Pro kind of franchise player mode type thing, it's so good. I never realized how insanely fast paced ice hockey was in that way. That you literally, like, substitutions are made live while the game is happening. You just have to go to the side, dive off, and then get replaced like as the game's happening. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I found that great. And as you said, you just feel like you've got to make an impact because you come on and you've got like a minute before you need to get back off the ice. And that's really satisfying. I also think the game gives you some great feedback as well. Like, when you jump back off the field, you'll have percentage scores for like your attack, defense, and teamwork play. And they'll all have like little pluses and minuses and like coach feedback on what you're doing right or wrong and stuff. And even those help me learn more about how I should be playing my role in the game. I just think it's all a fantastic package. And a shout out to that control scheme as well. This game uses a control scheme where the left stick is your movement of the player and the right stick is entirely the actual like hockey stick you're holding. And after you brush through a fairly, not arduous tutorial, but it takes a good half an hour to really get through the full tutorial. Once you've done that control scheme is genius. It's so clever, and it's well worth the effort of spending a bit of time figuring it out to do that over like some typical kind of button press based control scheme. This is leagues ahead of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I really like this game, Josh, and I didn't expect to.
Yeah, this really does surprise me in a way I didn't think it would do. The stick controls are really satisfying. The right stick almost becomes an extension of the player's arm by the time you finish, and that's really fun, especially when you're just whipping the air puck back and forth a little bit. It's really good times. I also love the fact that ice hockey, it's not easy to score in ice hockey, The games are fairly low scoring, but that does mean that when it goes in, my God, you just explode with happiness in the way that, only really FIFA on this list could achieve, because those are two sports where low scoring is kind of common. The joke of ice hockey is the keeper throws half the goal, and that's ridiculous. But I tell you what, when you get past that giant man, it's really satisfying, especially when you do it with like a little tuck shot and you're just absolutely bitching him out by skating one way, then just tapping it past him. My God, you feel like Jesus on skates by the time you finished on this game. And yeah, I just really liked this. I liked it a lot. I'd probably give it an 8, to be honest with you. I think this is a really fun game.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think it's got some great alternate modes as well. There's some stuff where you can like play. There's the kind of free mode that's a bit more kind of arcadey. That's incredibly fun. You can play as all the mascots from the teams, which is hilarious. Love that. There's even a mode called Wands, where it's literally just there's a goalkeeper in a goal. You're playing on like half an arena, and there's just you and 2 other players, and he just throws the puck out, and then you all have to like barge against each other trying to get the puck and then like score. That's great as well. Like it looks like it has this really fully featured kind of, I don't want to say like street ice hockey, but kind of street ice hockey mode, which sadly is now completely unpopulated because this is an old game. But obviously, as you said, in April we're getting the latest one, so that'll probably be that'll probably have a good player count on it again. And I would be really tempted to check some of that stuff out. I have to give this an 8. And I did not expect to enjoy this at all. So far on this list, this is in competition with F1 as being my favorite sports game. It might even steal the win.
Yeah, I'd give it that kind of praise as well. I think it's a damn good game. So it's an 8 out of 10 for the game. What do we make of the sport? Now, I have an odd relationship with ice hockey because for whatever reason, whenever I've been to North America, all I ever seem to watch is ice hockey. I don't really know why. It just becomes my go-to sport while I'm there. And particularly when I went to Canada, all I watched for a week was ice hockey games surrounded by angry Canadians just screaming at the TV in a sports bar. And I had a damn good time doing it. So I thoroughly enjoyed this game, perhaps more than most British people will. But how about you? What do you make of it?
Yeah, so this is a tricky one for me because I've probably seen 1 or 2 ice hockey games in my entire life. And the last time I did that will have been at least 8 years ago or something. So I'm coming at this really from like the maximum inexperienced position you could come from. But I would say the game NHL 20 has taught me how awesome this sport is. So now that I understand more the intricacies of this sport and I understand just how kind of fast paced it is and like it's just constant events, constant action, like I can't see why I would give this sport a low score. I think it seems fantastic. I do hope to watch more of it. This game has made me want to watch more of it as well. So I will probably try and seek it out a bit more now. Again, you've got the usual pitfalls of, trying to watch this stuff with the time difference is a nightmare because, you have to stay up till about 5 a.m. to watch a game and then try and go to work the next day, which is the common problem of getting into American sports in our country. But yeah, I think the sport kicks ass. I don't know. I'd be tempted to give it at least a 7, and I wouldn't argue too much if you wanted to go higher.
See, I'd give it an 8 because not only do you have the fast-paced action of a particular sport and the low-scoring kind of thrills that like a football can provide. I like a good low-scoring sport. You've also got big bloody fights where people just absolutely slam the shit out of each other. Yeah. And you've not seen anything that when 2 players just throw down, just pumping the crap out of each other, and the worst you get is a slight bin in the sin bin. That's it. That's what you get.
But then both teams are in there anyway, so it's like it's just a 4-on-4 game for a bit. Like it is mad. Like when I first kind of it was obviously when I was a lot younger, but when I first realized that was all you got for a penalty in NHL, like just go get in the bin for a couple of minutes. You've just beat the shit out of this man. Like it's absolutely insane. Like you accidentally stick your boot up slightly high in the air in football and you get rightly sent off from the game. Your game's over. Whereas NHL is like, no, just kick the shit out of him. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. So yeah, I can totally, I'm going to cede to you on this one because I haven't watched the real sport enough, but I believe from my time in this game that I would think the real sport is an 8 out of 10. So that is an 8 for the game, an 8 for the sport for a total of 16 for NHL.
Real good showing for ice hockey. I don't think many people would have seen that one.
No, that's great.
Nonetheless, let's move on to our next sport, which is Rory McIlroy's PGA Tour. It's a golf game starring the charisma vacuum that is Rory McIlroy, who had to take over the license after Tiger Woods had shagged one too many hookers and taken one too many prescription drugs. So we do hope he's recovering from his latest accident.
Of course we do, yeah.
I would say one of the greats of the game. One of the greats. We mock because we love. We mock
absolutely we do. I mean, a quick peek behind the curtain here, it really got me laughing there as we were talking about it, because as you said, Rory McIlroy is sadly an absolute charisma vacuum. And he's such a charisma vacuum that despite the fact we checked over our list of sports that we were covering on this show no less than 5 times today, we still forgot him until this segment began. And we had to add him in down the line because we forgot about that man again. Like, just, oh my God, wow. Yeah. Poor Rory. At least he's good at golf. That's something. But
not as much anymore. But
well, at least he was good at golf at one point. So yeah, that's fair. Anyway, yeah, let's roll into this game then. So this is a real old game because EA gave up on this license. It's now in the hands of 2K actually. So this is a game from the Xbox One's launch way back in 2015, and yeah, you can kind of tell that it is as well. This is very much that kind of, it has elements of that disappointing launch title sports game thing where, you know, quite a lot of the content seems to have faded away from the last release because they've probably been too busy trying to get the game to actually work and look good on new hardware and stuff like that. So it's got its issues. It has an incredibly bare bones career mode that's laughable, frankly. That's probably its biggest knock against it for sure. But I do think it plays a good game of golf. I think it has an enjoyable, fun, kind of simple swing system where you're using the analog stick to, you know, swing back and forth. And if you mess up the angle on that, you will kind of, you know, mess up your shot and stuff. That works pretty well. And yeah, you know, it's a satisfying game on the course, but everything around that does kind of fall flat.
Yeah, the presentation's not great here. The character models for the players themselves, my God, Rory McIlroy looks like he's haunted. But like whenever you see him,
yeah. But in fairness, Josh, there's parts where they show real cutscenes of Rory McIlroy, and he looks equally haunted in them. So I think they've done a good job. You can't really fault them for the Rory model.
yeah, that's a good point. To be fair. I think, but the game is though, it is very bare bones. The career mode is just a series of events where you don't even have a calendar to tell you what events are coming up.
Yeah, that's mad.
Which is mind-bogglingly basic. You upgrade stats, but you don't upgrade them personally. They just happen by playing golf, and it's really arbitrary how you actually manage to get these things up, and you'll win anyway. For what you'll just storm through the course with no problems, even being a 62 player. You'll just be beating poor old Rory McIlroy from the Haunted Mansion, like with absolutely no problems. It's a weird little game.
I think that's one of the things because I love a good golf game. I'm more on the arcadey side. You know, we spoke last week on the Nintendo Direct show about how much I'm excited for the new Mario Golf because I just adore video game golf. I think it's fantastic. But I think video game golf works better in an arcadey setting because, yeah, like ratings and stuff just don't work. Like what the hell's the difference between me having like 61 and 62 precision on my shot? Like clearly it's nothing because my 62 rated player is beating the best players in the world in this game. So it's obviously just not that big of a deal to have different stats really. So it just doesn't really work. And yeah, I mean, the career thing is absolutely insane. The fact that because I was thinking about going for some of the achievements in this game because, you know, you got your typical, you know, win the US Open, win this competition, win that competition. So I was thinking, I'll pop in the career and I've probably got one of those competitions coming up. Couldn't tell you if it's coming up or not. I've played about 5 or 6 of the events in a career and I can't see what's next. So I have no idea if those competitions are going to come around soon in my career or not. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's mad.
But as you say, it does play a pretty decent golf. It has my favorite type of golf game control, which is that you draw the right stick back and then flick it forward to, you know, hit the ball. It's really tactile. It's really engaging. If you're slightly off with your stick, you might shank your shot a little bit. I like that. It also it does that as well in the putting. For example, there was a game on the service called the Golf Club 2 that left, and they've now got the PGA Tour license, the developers of that, where the putting was just a button press. Yeah. And it was really boring. At least in this one, you have to play through the shot. You have to read the green. You know, it's all there. The actual golf isn't too bad, probably because the golf in the old Tiger Woods games was pretty damn good. There wasn't much they needed to do here to keep that working. You mentioned the lack of modes. It has a dearth of content. It really does. It's just completely lacking. They've added some courses in since the game came out, and that's nice, but, you know, it needs variety in its career mode. It needs variety somewhere beyond just getting on the golf course and hitting a ball. You know, it's just a little bit too tedious, and the presentation is not engaging enough to make you want to keep doing that. You just play everybody's golf. Let's be honest. You just put it down and play that.
That's fair. I mean, one of the things I enjoyed the most on this game, it's not really the game playing to its strengths, but as you said, they did add some courses after the fact, and they've got like a few kind of like daft wacky ones. Like there's like a shipwreck one that's like pirate themed. There's a course just based on Battlefield 4 where like a war is happening around you, and like all the commentary teams on both of those ones are like talking about the course as if they're in the context of that happening. And I like the effort put into that. I do. I mean, and let's be honest as well, this Battlefield 4 course by default becomes probably the best piece of Battlefield 4 content that exists. So got to give it credit for that. It's a better Battlefield 4 game than Battlefield 4. So that's pretty impressive. Gotta love that. But yeah, on the whole, just not enough content and just a severely lacking career mode. Yeah, it's just about propped up by decent golf mechanics, but I couldn't give this more than a 6. I imagine if I played it at launch, I would have been even harsher because it had about half the courses at launch. But as it is now, 6 out of 10. It's fun. It's fun enough to play for a bit.
I guess I could go for a 6. I came in at 5, but I'll go up to a 6 on this one. It's not a terrible game. It's just lacking in a lot of what made the Tiger Woods games great. But that's Rory for you. Let's talk about the game of golf itself, though.
All right.
Let's be honest here. I actually quite like golf. I think golf's quite entertaining to watch. But I would also say that 75% of golf is utterly pointless until you get to the final day when things actually matter. How highly can you rate a sport where 75% of it, I know it does matter in terms of position on the, I know it does matter, but it also absolutely does not matter. So you got to get to that final round for any real excitement to be started coming from this game.
Yeah, that's kind of fair. I mean, I think it's got a couple of bits, right? Like there's kind of, on the second day, like you might have some players who are like, they've got like the cut line because half of the players get like sent home after 2 days. And, maybe you've got a big player who's kind of battling to stay in the tournament for the last 2 days. And there's elements of excitement to that. But at the same time, if you're that close to the cut line, you're probably out of the competition anyway, really.
You're not going to win.
You're not actually going to win. So there is that. I mean, I don't know. I think golf is I think it's presented well, like on TV, because, they typically can just pan around through all the different people on the early days and kind of, show you the best bits of what's happening, jump in with a few of the kind of best players in the world and see how they're getting on. And then as you get to the final days, obviously they change it so that, you're always paired up with the person who's next to you on the leaderboard. So, you get to watch the top people go out against each other and kind of battle it out in a proper kind of final event kind of way, and I think that's good. So I don't know, I'm quite high on the sport of golf, but I think it's got enough problems that I can't score it too highly. Like I can't sit in front of the TV and watch a full 4 days of the golf. That's just not a thing that can happen. It's more the kind of thing where if I notice an interesting story, I'll maybe tune in and check out an hour or two, and if it keeps my attention, then I'll stay with it. But I'm not sat clamoring to sit and watch 4 days of golf, sadly. So I don't know, maybe like a 6 is fair, I guess.
I guess a 6 is fair. I will say golf, when it has a good moment, it has a real good moment.
Yeah.
Tiger coming back from absolutely nothing to win the Masters was incredible viewing. And you've got moments where people like the going to win comfortably, like John van der Velde in the Open about 15, 18 years ago. And he completely loses his mind. He's got one hole to go. He puts it in the water. He refuses to take a drop shot. And he's got his trousers above his knees. And he's trying to hack it out of the pond. And it's incredible because these moments happen. Because all it takes is one bad shot. And everything you've done for 4 days collapses around you. And you can see it on their face. And it's deeply satisfying to watch someone's dreams get snatched away from them.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I mean, it's one of those things, right, where like we were saying that, one of the great things about cricket is that pressure that every shot is important. As a batsman, it's like you need to stay in, especially in a test match, you need to stay in there. You need, you can't get out for anything right now because the game will basically be over for your team. And golf kind of takes that, like ramps that up to 11, right? It's like, even if you're on the final green and you've got a fairly easy putt, but you need that putt to win the championship, like the level of pressure on you there is unrivaled by, most of the sports we've talked about won't have a single event of that level of pressure. Like it's just crazy. It's like winning, like maybe the final penalty in a shootout to win the World Cup or something in football. It's just the absolute maximum level of pressure that could be on someone. And I do love it for that. But again, as we said, it's just a bit too inconsistent. So gonna give it a 6, I think.
6 out of 10 gives it a 12, which is becoming a very common score on this list, but
that's a
such is
baseline
life.
score.
Let's move on to our next game, Skate 3, representing skateboarding.
Yeah, Skate 3. I mean, I tell you, I wish there was some Tony Hawk's in this list. That would be pretty fun. But you know, the skate games are great. I've spent a lot of time captivated by this series back when it was big about a decade ago. I've completed all 3 of these games. Skate 3 it's one of those weird things where it's probably technically the best skate game just because it's the most recent one, but it actually didn't do anything to really improve anything from Skate 2. There was a really short release cycle there. I think it came out like 9 months later or something stupid, and it was a bit unnecessary. But, you know, Skate 3 is the one that's in Game Pass, so that's what we go for. And yeah, look, these games are pretty cool. Like they completely go the different direction to Tony Hawk's in that, you know, in Tony Hawk's, you're a weird skateboarding superhero man who can string together like 5,000 moves, and that's fine. Whereas Skate has it's a realistic skateboarding game. Like Skate makes you feel cool for jumping over a small table and doing a kickflip, like, because in real life that's cool as shit. Like, you know, that's totally fair. And I love that it manages to achieve that, because I think when Skate first got announced, that was my main worry, was that like, how am I going to feel cool playing this when Tony Hawk's exists, you know? And it massively succeeds at that. I think it's a really, really fun, satisfying approach to skateboarding games.
I think Skate 3 is a pretty good game. I think it's not a patch on the best of the Tony Hawk series, but I think it's playable. I think skateboarding, for whatever reason, translates quite well to video games in a way that many extreme sports maybe don't, but skateboarding in particular, perhaps because it can be so high score chasing, and it kind of makes sense within the logic of the game and the sport itself to have high scores, because that is how you're scored, technically. You know, you're scored on what crazy trick you can do. So you've got to keep pushing yourself to do more and more crazy stuff. So I think it's a pretty decent time. As you said, this would be a lot more interesting if Tony Hawk was here, because that would be scoring like a high 9. Whereas instead we're getting Skate 3, which is a serviceable, but, you know, an undeniably lesser effort to the pinnacle of the Tony Hawk's days. I'd probably say it's a 6, maybe a 7. I could be persuaded to a 7 if you're really hot on it. I've not played as much as you have.
Yeah, I'd give this a 7. I think it's just, like I said, it's a really cool series, and it nails that way of making normal skateboarding seem cool, because it is cool. You know, it does a really good job of that. It's a game that's really fun to just go around the open world and just kind of skate around, and, you know, like you see a rail and you just think, oh, screw it, I'll give it a go. You know, I'll see if I can jump on that. And it's just a lot more relaxed in that way. You know, Tony Hawk's, your mind's running at like 100 miles an hour, right? You're like trying to get a 5 million point combo. Whereas this, you know, sometimes you can just press a button to get off your skateboard and just look around and think like, wait, what would be good to do here? Or you can even pick stuff up and move it. So like quite early on in Skate 3, you'll learn to, like, you know, you can literally just pick up a bin and push it like in front of a ramp and then jump over the bin to get like a cool photo or like, you know, achieve something by doing that. And it's really good for that. So yeah, I'd like to give Skate 3 a 7. I think it's a good series, and I'm glad it's going to be coming back.
Yeah, 7 seems fine for me. How do we feel about skateboarding, the sport? Because I can't say I've ever watched a skateboarding event in my life, but I also can't think of anything I'd want to do less than watch a skateboarding event. So this is kind of tough for me.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was growing up, I was massively into the first Tony Hawk's games. That kind of got me like really into like skateboarding culture and stuff. And I got a skateboard, which I always sucked at, but I still loved just going around on it. So, you know, I'm a big advocate for skateboarding. I think it's awesome. But I do think as a sport, it sucks a lot of balls, to be honest. I just don't think it's any fun to watch. I used to watch it. I used to always watch like the X Games and all the kind of different extreme sports events that would be on there, because it kind of fit my attitude as I was growing up. You know, that was the sort of thing I thought was really cool. But actually watching it, I don't think any of watching it was fun. It was almost like I was just doing it because I liked skateboarding and skating games rather than the sport of skateboarding. I don't think it's a good sport. I really don't. I think skateboarding's at its strongest when it's, you know, kind of like, I mean, for example, right, there used to always be a thing in Tony Hawk's games where when you finished the career mode of a certain skater, you'd see like a 2-minute video montage of like people recording that skater doing cool stuff in the real world. Like that's the best of real world skating, right? Like, and that's kind of what the Skate series of games leans into. It's about getting cool photos and videos of you doing like finding spots and doing tricks on them. That's the strength of skateboarding. I don't think skateboarding as a sport is any good at all. It might well be the worst sport we've came across yet.
I suppose the problem with skateboarding at its joy is that it's anti-establishment. And there's nothing more establishment than a competitive sporting event where you're judged by a panel of your peers. So just by its very nature, you've kind of knocked up skateboarding. So,
that's it. Yeah.
I don't know. Go as low as you like for this one. I ain't going to defend narkboarding that much, to be honest with you. It's not for me.
I'm going to give it a 3, I think. Gonna give it a 3.
Fair.
So it's a distant last now. It's even lost to the personality vacuum himself, Rory McIlroy. So
saved only by Moto GP being just an absolute dumpster.
Oh god, yeah. Sorry, I forgot that game because it's that bad. But yeah. So yeah, tough run for skateboarding there.
Okay, next game: SSX and snowboarding.
All right, SSX. So this is quite an old game as well. It's another series that's just fell by the wayside a bit, sadly. But this is a arcadey snowboarding game. It really leans into the arcadiness. You do mad stuff in this. It's basically Tony Hawk's on a skateboard, and yeah, I love this game. I think this game's great. Really really fun time. It's showing its age now. I picked this up this week to remind myself about it because I just remembered playing it about 11 years ago and enjoying it. So I picked it back up and it's looking rough. It's you can practically see the pixels in this thing at this point. It's definitely seen better days, but the gameplay there is still really solid. It's just got a fun loop of just going down big hills, doing crazy tricks. As you build up a trick meter, it starts playing the it's tricky song because that's what the SSX series does, and it's really fun. And yeah, I don't have many negatives to say about this. I think it's a really fun game, really fast paced, like Tony Hawk's. You've got to be constantly thinking about where you're going to go next and how what line you're going to go down to kind of get down this mountain quick or find the biggest jump to do a great trick. So yeah, big fan.
I hate this game. I really dislike this game. It's a weird one for me, is this, because I've always seen this on the Game Pass library and thought to myself, I owned SSX about 10 years ago. Why did I never finish it? And I couldn't remember why. Clearly, I'd somehow eternal sunshined myself, because upon booting this game up, I was just met with the horrors of just how much I really dislike this game. Along with the fact it's worst crime, and it hits you straight off the bat, is it couldn't be any lamer if it possibly tried.
Yeah.
It's a 90s game developed in 2011 by a bunch of people who wouldn't know the thrill and enjoyment of the 90s culture if it slapped them in the face. It is almost like something that a movie screenwriter would do as like a parody, as something that doesn't either make sense. It's just nonsensically tragic in how edgy it's trying to be. And it just annoyed me from the very off. But beyond that, I find the skateboarding itself to be clunky, hard to control. The courses to be a nightmare of different routes, which all mingle together, but each one is stuck with a crappy pratfall, which you have to manage to navigate. It gives you the most functionally useless time rewind button I've ever seen in a video game, because when you rewind time, everybody else carries on as normal. So
yeah, that's rough.
Utterly pointless. It's the most useless thing I've ever seen in a video game in a very long time. Because if you press it, you're going to lose. So you've lost 6 seconds rewinding back. And that just irked me to the absolute teeth, because the rewind is there to hide bad game design, to hide the arsehole pratfalls, which have just been snuck in and you can't really do much about, where you just don't go on a grind for whatever reason. It just refuses to do it. And you fall down a cliff and it goes, well, you can rewind, but you'll be last. And it's just pointless. And it really irked me. And after restarting a mountain about 7 times, because I just kept happening, I just went, no, this is why I hated this game. It annoys me. I find the snowboard itself to just be all over the place, the slight nudge of the analog stick, and you just veer to the left before you even know what's happened to you. It's got these upgrade systems which are completely pointless. Like, why does every game need an upgrade system?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It's just layers of menus and pointlessness. Saying now you've got a 62% to survive in this mountain. Why? What difference does it make? What is that? I thought you were cool, man. Are you giving me a 62% because I've not spent enough money? That's another dark move. I just dislike this game. It irks me on a lot of different ways. And it's not held up, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's a weird one, really, because this is like, I don't see a lot of differences between this game and a Tony Hawk's game. I don't think it's as good, obviously, as the best Tony Hawk's games, but I think it'll be rare that you'll find people who like one and completely hate the other, which is obviously what you kind of are, which is quite surprising. But I will agree that this has not held up at all. As I said, I played through this over a decade ago, and I know I loved it. Then I remember thinking really fondly of it. And I also love that hook in this game where it's like you do races and trick events, but your goal is to like get down all of these giant dangerous mountains, and you have to like survive them, because at the time the effects of doing those big mountains were kind of great. Like you'd be going down a mountain and there'd be like avalanches and stuff, and visually it was very impressive when it came out, but sadly now it has lost a lot of that luster because it doesn't look at all impressive anymore. It looks pretty damn awful, to be honest. So yeah, it's a shame. I think if you'd played this game when it came out, and I also do think that there's a bit of a learning curve here as well. I do agree. Like from picking it up for an hour this week, the controls of the snowboard do feel very, very jittery at first, but I know from memory that does get a hell of a lot better as you get through the game. So I think it takes a bit more time than maybe a Tony Hawk's does to get into. You know, there's a bit of time here where it does seem a bit shaky, but if you get into it more, I do think there's a good game here. I do just think sadly it's maybe shown its age a bit too much now to be a huge recommendation.
Yeah, I will back you up and say I think the actual mountain survival descents are quite fun. I think there's something there. That's the only time the rewind button kind of makes a bit of a sense, because you do have these massive obstacles to overcome, but you can just go back and try again. I'd actually just put a limit on the amount of times you can use it and make it more functionally useful. And I think you solve a lot of the problems that this game has. If everything, it's like in an F1, if you rewind in those F1 games, everybody goes back with you and you carry on as normal. If you do a similar thing here and only give you 3 uses per event, I think you'd solve a lot of that frustration. But alas, for what it is, I'd be probably looking at a 5 for me. I really don't like this game too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I'd like to campaign for a 6, but then at the same time, I really am surprised by how badly it's shown its age from picking it up this week. I would have had this down as a 7 or 8 when I played it back in its release year, which I think was 2009. But it does look real old now. Yeah, you know what? I can go with you. I'll go with a 5. I'm really disappointed, but yeah, it has not held up well.
And for the sport of snowboarding, I say you've got the exact same problem that skateboarding has, probably to a lesser extent because winter sports are a thing and the Winter Olympics is a thing. So I feel like snowboarding has more of a purpose. So I'd say it's a better sport than skateboarding, but it's again not necessarily something I'm particularly interested in.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is saved by like Winter Olympics and winter sports events like that. You know, I think again, it's not something you're seeking out. You're not going to jump to watch some snowboarding, but when you see it at the Olympics or the Winter Olympics, obviously, like it's fun, it's watchable. So I think it has to sit above, you know, if we look at some of our scores we've gave sports so far, I think it's better than skateboarding, it's better than Moto GP, and that's probably where it ends. Like, does it maybe sit with F1 on a 5? Like, is that kind of?
I'd say so. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think it's lucky to get its 5, but yeah, I think it'd be mean to go too much lower. So yeah, okay, I'm on board with that. That's an overall 10 for SSX and the sport of snowboarding.
Okay, and our final sport of the list, UFC 3, which represents the sport of mixed martial arts. So, UFC, this is the only fighting game in town pretty much these days. There's not really any other competition unless you count 2K wrestling games, and who the heck would? You know, God help you. Yeah, this is pretty fun. I actually quite like this game.
No,
this is a decent time.
I agree completely. I actually bought the first 2 UFC games when they came out, and then UFC 3 was a game that I've played a bit of. I think I played it in the trial weekend or something, because when I loaded it up this week, I'd already had like 20 professional fights, which was nice. But yeah, I picked it back up this week, played through it, and I think this is really fun. I think this is currently the best in class for actual kind of like punching and kicking combat. You know, it feels really, really satisfying to punch someone in the face in a UFC game. It really, really does. And even though UFC 3 is 1 game out of date, they do have a 4th one out now. Like, other than the updated rosters, like, this doesn't feel like an old game. This still feels fresh and new, and it looks great and stuff. So there's a lot to like here. I think this is really good. It's let down, as every UFC game is that I've tried so far, by it tries its best, but it's very difficult to make a good like wrestling game and ground game part of a UFC game because it's all so technical. Like all of the kind of when someone gets pulled to the ground, all the grappling and kind of changing positions, the stuff that just looks like sex to people who don't know the sport, like that stuff is really, really difficult to put in a game. And they're getting better, but it's still a bit rough here.
It's still a little bit, it gives you a button icon on the screen and you swear to God you are doing it, and yet nothing seems to happen. It's just bafflingly awkward to do. I found that the minute I got taken to the ground, 9 times out of 10, the fight was over, which is not necessarily the best way to play a UFC game, where to defeat the number one fighter in the world, you just need to trip him up. But nonetheless, that's kind of where we stand. But as you say, kicking and punching people in the face in this game and the slow motion replay you get to do it is about as satisfying as anything you're going to get in the gaming world. It has that fight night feel of just a big hook to the face, just flooring somebody, especially when you do it within the opening 10 seconds of the round, which is even better still. There's nothing better than the bell ringing. It's a big championship fight, and 10 seconds later, the poor bastard you're up against is on the ground. That's a real good time.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think they do a good job with the career in this as well. Like, it's got a couple of bits that are a little tedious. Before every fight, you have to do these like fight camps that once you've done about 10 of them, you kind of don't want to do anymore. Like, you basically just got a set amount of points you can spend, and you use those on training, and you have to use someone promoting the fight, or else the fight won't be very hyped and stuff. And it's well put together, but it gets a little old. But, as a presentation thing, it all matches up with the real sport. This is a sport that is very much built on generating hype for these fights. That's how the business works. So I don't mind that it's there. I think the career does a good job of just propelling you from kind of major event to major event. Like, it kind of sets you up as like, you're an up and comer. So you're going to do about 5 fights and then get your first like UFC trial or something. And then after you beat that one, you'll see that in 5 fights time, you're going to have this particular fight against a new rival and stuff. And it always feels like it's pushing you towards, your overall journey to become like the best at fighting ever and stuff. And I think it does pretty well with that too.
Yeah, I think the career mode is a pretty decent time. Little bare bones, could definitely be improved upon, but it's all there. I think it's a little low in modes. I mean, beyond the career and an ultimate team, which just baffled me. I spent all of 30 minutes in the UFC ultimate team and just went, God knows. No idea what's going on. Nah. This is way too weird for me, and just backed out again. But I imagine for a good multiplayer fighter, you'd have a decent time just absolutely punching your friends in the face and having a couple of afternoons playing it. I think it's a decent game. I'd probably give it a 7. I actually quite enjoyed it by the time I'd finished my time with it.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think, like if they got the ground game and submission stuff a bit better, I'd be leaning towards an 8. I think it's so satisfying to play these games. Like, there's so much variety in the moves you can use, but it's all quite easy to learn. Like, especially the striking, obviously, as we said. And yeah, there's a ton of positives to this stuff. I just think that submission stuff just needs a bit of work because, I mean, I got 1 submission victory in my career, and it was because I was already like the best fighter ever at this point, and I was just trying to get enough. There's these targets you have to hit to be officially seen as like the greatest ever and stuff. And the game just clearly ran out of eligible fighters to go against me, so it just picked this like create a character man that was rated about 62, and he was like, he'd won like 7 fights and lost 5, and I was like, what the hell's he doing in here? So I thought, okay, I'm gonna make this man tap out, and I did manage it, so that's something. I got a submission win against him, but yeah, against anyone else, if you've got the AI on a good difficulty and they have even moderate submission or wrestling skills, you kind of just can't get away from them. They're just going to do whatever they want to you. It's a bit rough, but yeah, 7 out of 10. I think it's a really good game.
And for the sport itself, I mean, to me, this is just boxing, and it has almost the exact same problems that boxing has, but perhaps with a slightly more odious face of the company. So it's kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't go much higher than a 5 for a UFC. It has a lot of problems for me.
I'm pretty high on MMA as a sport. I think it's, there's big issues, obviously, with the fact that the UFC kind of runs the show because they can do a lot of pretty, dreadful things, and, they can manage the fighters in rough ways and stuff like that. And it does have elements of the boxing problem where, maybe the guy who deserves the title shot isn't getting it because there's a big money match coming up or something. But I do think everything being under these big brands like UFC and Bellator, as to a lesser extent, it does help you actually get, like there's no part of MMA where it's like, the champion has the belt and the number one contender's ready to go, but like bullshit politics means they won't fight. It's like the UFC will book that fight and they'll promote the hell out of it. And like I said, the same thing will happen in like Bellator and stuff. And I think that is a big, big benefit, because you do get to see a lot more of those big, huge main event fights, because there's no one stopping it. There's no crap going on. And like, sure, they'll kind of bend to like the will of the kind of highest profile people. Like, Conor McGregor can realistically just do whatever he wants. He can come back after 2 years and have a title match and lose it and then ask for another title match. Like, stuff like that does happen. But I think that, you get to see big fights more often. And I think as a combat sport, it's it's almost too brutal. Like, it's, if you like watching violent combat sports, MMA is pretty disgraceful at times. So yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it quite a lot. It has to be said. I'd be looking to give the sport a 7. I think it's just real good.
Yeah, it's quite violent. It's almost too violent for me.
Yeah,
it's an
it
odd
is
thing
rough,
to
yeah.
say. I tend to retreat to the more safe comforts of pro wrestling or boxing, as it doesn't quite feel as brutal to view as somebody almost having their lives shortened in front of my eyes. But I could go for a 6 or 7 on this. I think it's entertaining. I don't think I'd say a 6 over a 7. I don't think it's leagues ahead of boxing, which we gave a 5, because it's fundamentally the same thing. Just now you can kick. So it does seem a little bit bizarre.
It's a wonderfully reductive representation of mixed martial arts. It's like boxing, but now you can kick. Because that wouldn't be kickboxing, of course. That's anyway.
That's the new slogan. Boxing, but you can kick.
That'd get the fans in. That'd get butts on seats. But that works for me. I mean, you wanted to give it a 5, I wanted to give it a 7. So let's balance that out at a 6. So that gives MMA a 13, which does at least put it ahead of the middle of the pack events there. All right, then. So that is the end of the list of sports. So I guess we should do a final rundown here of the rankings. So in at 11th and distant last, you'd have to say, is the combination of Moto GP 20 and the sport of Moto GP. That's we just don't care about that. Let's be honest. That's what's happened there. And okay, so moving in at joint 9th is pretty appropriate pairing of Skate 3 and SSX. So skateboarding and snowboarding there with 10 out of 20 totals. Got a bunch of games at joint 6th. We've got NBA Live 19 and basketball, Madden NFL 20, American football, Fight Night Champion, boxing, and the elusive Rory McIlroy with his PGA Tour golf. They're all 12 out of 20. That's good for joint 6th. Up at tied for 4th, we've got UFC with its MMA sport and Formula 1 2019 for F1. Both got 13 out of 20, so that's a pretty good showing. In probably the shock of the round, I think you'd have to say, is Cricket 19, representing the glorious sport of cricket, up at 3rd place. And actually not at all the shock of the round, because it has to be NHL, the sport of ice hockey, getting 2nd place with 16 out of 20 on a list made by 2 just English people who don't know much about it. That's a really good showing. And then in at number 1, in at the top spot, is the inevitable, of course, FIFA 20 and football, because we practically had to put it there, or else, what would we be doing if we didn't say football was the best?
It's a damn good list. There's a lot to enjoy there. I love Formula 1, a sport we really hate. Deep down, sat at 4th. It's quite satisfying to see. It's a lesson for us all. You can achieve anything, even with a crap sport. You can make a damn good video game. And also in this context, we completely ruined them the other way by like Skate 3 is a good game, but your sport does suck, so you're technically bad. That's you can recover from a bad sport, but not a real bad sport, is the lesson we've learned today. All right, then. So that is the end of our special Beat the Sports bonus episode. If you want to get in touch and let us know what you thought of the show, or maybe tell us all the reasons we're completely wrong about your favourite sport, then we'd always love to hear from you. So you can find us at Beat the Sheet on Twitter. Via email, you can get us at beatthesheetpodcast@gmail.com.
or you can head over to our YouTube channel, which you can find by searching Beat the Sheet, the Xbox Game Pass podcast, if you're not already there, of course. And if you want to drop into the video on that and drop us a comment and a thumbs up on the episode, that would be fantastic. That kind of stuff really helps us get the word out about the show. So, thanks a lot for listening, guys. And as always, we'll be back for Beat the Sheet episode 40 on Monday. So we'll see you there.